Welcome everybody, and thanks for having me here today. I wanted to start, perhaps, I've been watching a lot of the mindfulness podcasts over the last few weeks, and I wanted to start from my story about what's been happening with me, because that then puts into context some of the bits and pieces that I'm going to share with you today. So back in February 22nd, 10 years ago, 2010, we of course had the Christchurch Earthquake, and I at the time was in a store out in the outskirts of the city, and I was just walking in, and when the quake hit, I got back in my car and I went back to the pharmacy, and my partner said to me, "So you look terrible, what's wrong?" And I said, "Well, my friends are dead. I don't know who, I don't know where, but I felt them go." And I had 7 funerals in 7 days. And I kept myself busy during that time. I threw myself into doing good deeds for others, and I made myself feel good by making others feel good. And I think we all can perhaps identify times in our lives when we've done that. In 2015, my younger brother suddenly died at the age of 42 in Australia, and we traveled to Australia for his funeral. And 2 days after his funeral, as my sister and I were preparing to come back to New Zealand, my father was in the shower, and he fell and crushed his spine. He fell backwards into the bathtub, and he completely crushed L1. He also fractured T3, T5, T7, T9, and L3. And he was in a lot of pain for a lot of time. Later on that year, I broke up with my girlfriend, and my son also decided that he was going to leave high school prematurely. So there was a lot of stress, there was a lot of stuff. And so I got on a plane and I traveled to Kingston, which is on the other side of Lake Wakatipu, which is near Queenstown. And for those of you that don't know New Zealand at all, just think Lord of the Rings. The countryside down there is the mountains and so on. And I sat for 4 days staring at the mountain with no technology, just taking time to recover. And that was a way of me being able to restore and reflect and just cease the noise. And I want to go back to the September 4th quake that we had prior to the February 22nd. So this was the 7.1 quake that we had that knocked down a few buildings, but nobody died. And what we found, though, is we had no power. And so if you hadn't taken money out of the ATM machines, then you had no cash. And a lot of people, we discovered, didn't even have any food for like the last 2 days in the pantry. And, you know, last year here in New Zealand, we took a decision to do lockdowns really early before we had any major numbers of cases. And what we found was that there were these supply shortages. And I'm sure you've seen that in the United States and other parts of the world, people going in and buying all the toilet paper. We won't go as to why that is, but, you know, there was just this siege mentality, food, and people would buy seeds. We had the local seed shops run out of seeds. How anyone thought they were going to grow tomatoes and so on within a few weeks to feed their family, I don't know, and masks and sanitizers. And so all of these things were, you ask yourself, why didn't we prepare? Because why didn't we learn from that quake, where we learned that we needed some food and we needed some other supplies and keep the flashlight and the emergency supplies and emergency water, but we didn't seem to learn. And I want to reflect on how we can use that analogy for our mindfulness preparation, about keeping a well-stocked emotional larder and making sure too that it's the good stuff, no junk food. So we need to make sure that we've thought about, we're putting good stuff in. We also need to make sure that our shopping list each week is short, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. They might call another lockdown, or there might be another outbreak. And same with our emotional stress list. We need to make sure that we're keeping a short stress shopping list. We need to make sure that we're not sweating the small stuff, because it's very easy to be king of the petty. And often the needs of the critical can be drowned out by the noise of the nonsense. Identifying who are the stress makers and who are the stress takers, Who is putting extra resilience into your emotional pantry? And who just stands at your emotional fridge and constantly grazes and has midnight feasts? Who are the people in your life that are sucking the energy and adding to your stress? And who are those that are taking the stress away from you and giving you extra resilience? This is a really emotional time, and it's very difficult sometimes to determine the difference between fact and opinion. And this can apply too to people's opinions of us. And sometimes people will share their opinion with us, and we need to identify what is fact and what is opinion, because that is all adding to our stress levels. And it's great that we're going to be mindful, but if we're continuing to do all these therapies, that's wonderful. But what are we doing to cut down on the additional stuff that's adding to our stress levels or removing from our emotional bank account? I'm reading an amazing book at the moment called The Courage to be Disliked. And it's written by, if I can pronounce this correctly, Ishiro Kishimi and Fumitaki Koga. But it's called The Courage to be Disliked. And it's using the theories of Alfred Adler, who was a philosopher that I wasn't familiar with previously. And the authors explain how we are all free to determine our own future, free of the shackles of past experience, doubts, and the expectations of others. I found it a little bit uncomfortable because it's effectively an interview between philosopher and youth, and it's almost like a fly on the wall experience, but I've really found it quite liberating. And so I encourage you to investigate that book. When I have my clients come to see me, we talk about a snowball of stress. And I'm sure, I know my colleagues in Texas and the surrounding areas have had these terrible blizzards. But I'm sure many of you, perhaps maybe not in Florida, but in other parts of the United States, you've all made a snowball or maybe a snowman. And you've got your base, your middle, and your top. And of course, the base is always the larger ball, and that's the one that melts last. Well, if we think about on those clear nights when there's no clouds in the sky and there's a hoar frost, the next morning, that snowball is now an ice ball, and it becomes a lot longer to melt, and usually several weeks maybe, and afterwards the grass underneath has died and there's just a little mud patch. Well, I want to use that analogy for our stress. So if you think about the snowball, and this can go right back to your childhood, where a trauma happened and the snow came down, the stress snow came down, and you rolled around in that and you produced this ball, and you were given a limited time to melt that snowball. And whatever was left, you had to put back in the cupboard until the next flurry of stress came along and that ball came out and it rolled around. But now it's bigger and its center is ice, and now you're going to put that away. And then later on, and this keeps coming out and keep coming out. And most of my clients that come to see me, their snowball isn't this, it's now this, and it's about to roll on top of them. You know, somebody dies, we're given 3 days to grieve, and then we have to get back onto our horse or go back to our job, and we have to carry on as though everything's fine again. And yet so often the residualness of the snowball has remained, and it's knocking at that door, and we're not given the opportunity to bring that snowball out and let it expose to the sun and help just melt that just a little bit. The exciting thing is that these mindfulness podcasts that are being done by this fabulous group of people is one way that you can bring your snowball out and start to melt it. Now, we're busy people, and some of us really struggle to find different options on how we can find a moment to melt our snowball. And I want to give you my technique that I share with my clients. It's called my 5-minute blink and breathe. If you were to sit there right now and do absolutely nothing, there are 2 things you actually have to do. You have to blink, because otherwise your eyes will dry out, or if you close your eyes, you might nod off to sleep. And unfortunately, you have to breathe because it's essential for life. But this is, you know, we here in our mindfulness experience, we're talking about mindful breathing. And so you have to blink, you have to breathe. And I ask you to get your watch or your phone and put a timer on with a buzz for 5 minutes, and then place that upside down somewhere where you can't see it, because I don't want you checking on the time every few minutes. Has it been 5 minutes yet? The alarm's going to go off, and make sure that it's not an abrupt alarm. It's just to vibrate so you can hear it. And then I want you to breathe through your nose like you're smelling a rose. And I want you to count to 5, because they've shown that you can't physiologically think and do a math equation. So that means that you can step off the hamster wheel that is our lives for just a few minutes and stop thinking, because how many of us will find when we're trying to do certain mindfulness techniques that our mind wanders to the grocery list or what the kids are doing, or we've got to do this or we've got to do that. You can't do that and maintain your count. So you're going to breathe in for a count of 5, and then you're going to blow out like you're blowing on the back of your hand, or perhaps blowing on the neck of your loved one, to a count of 9. So breathing in and breathing out. So I got to a count of 20. Now, the exciting thing is when you breathe in, of course, your heart rate has to increase to pump oxygen in from the lungs and pump carbon dioxide out and get everything running. But when you're breathing out, the heart rate slows down. So by slowing down your heart rate, you reduce your blood pressure, you obviously reduce your pulse, but you also do some amazing things to your cortisol levels, your stress levels. And you'll find after a few minutes, you probably are breathing into a count of 9 and breathing out to a count of maybe even 30, 35. So then you're suddenly only taking 2 or 3 breaths a minute. Now, if you're in the evening and you're lying in bed and you've woken up and you can't go to sleep, then if you close your eyes, and I want you to imagine a beautiful scene, maybe it's the land of the hobbits, or it's a jungle scene, whatever you like, but there's a lake in front of you. The water is clear and there's a bucket in the middle of the lake. You can choose the color of the bucket. It can be a plain or it can be a color of your choice. And as you breathe in now, I want you to watch that bucket descend into the water. And it's descending reasonably rapidly, because when it comes back up, you're blowing out. Now you watch the bucket coming back up, backing up, back up through. The water's crystal clear. You can see it coming to the surface. And at the end of your breath, it breaks the water. And then you breathe in again, and it comes back down into the water. And then you breathe out and come back up and watch that bucket slowly ascend. Again, you've got something visual. During the day, you might be able to use a cloud or a bush, or a tree, and just enjoy the intricacies of the leaves and the branches, or the puffiness of the cloud, and just take that all in. It allows your eyes to look at something while you're doing your counting. And at night, then you've got that visual space that you can enjoy, that mountain scene or jungle scene, and watch the bucket. And again, you're now stepping off that hamster wheel. You're not worrying about why you're awake. You're finding your heart rate slowing. You're taking pleasure in that moment and allowing yourself to come back to a place of peace. Thank you very much. Jeanette, I'll hand over back to you.
Mark, I didn't want to stop breathing. All right, Misha.
Well, Mark, do you want to give us just a couple of words about, because, I think our people would be really fascinated to just kind of hear your take on, because, New Zealand has no cases, I think, right? Or very few. And just like, how are you guys living? I mean, are you feeling any impact of the pandemic, or is your life totally normal?
Well, thank you for that. I really want to take an air of sensitivity around this, because we are in the extreme opposite of places like the United States and the United Kingdom.
Mhm.
And so I'm really approaching your question with some serious kindness, gentleness, and yeah,
But I think for us, good to hear that there are places where, you know, life continues nearly as normal. And I mean, whatever you feel like sharing, I think it's fine. I just find it, you know, inspiring that there are places that figured out how to do, and it could serve to some degree as a partial example for us to follow.
So we had a lockdown for 8 weeks last year, and the lockdown, we talk about levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. So level 4 is basically everyone's at home, and if you're out, you need to be an essential worker, and you could be stopped by the police. And if so, you had to have some sort, if you weren't, oh, you had a letter. So I made a letter for all of my employees that said, you know, they're essential worker, they're employed at Staywell Pharmacy, and their hours of employment are from this to this. If you had to go out, it was only to buy groceries, and you know, there were limited numbers of people that could go anywhere, and masks everywhere. My business took a 95% hit in terms of the retail side of my business. Prescriptions were still fairly high. We would have one person in our pharmacy at any one time, and then a queue out the door, which everyone was 2 meters apart. Level 3 is that you aren't allowed more than 10 people in a place, and you've got to make sure also that those people pretty much are like your family. Oh, level 4 too, you only had 2 bubbles. So you could have your home bubble and your work bubble, or you could have your home bubble and one member of family's bubble. So because I had a home bubble and a work bubble, I couldn't go and see my children, I couldn't see my mother, and I couldn't see my sister, because they were in their own bubbles. So my sister and my mother were in each other's bubble, and my children were in their home bubble. And so we basically did the ultimate in social distancing. We haven't had many deaths, and the majority of those deaths were in rest homes. We still get the odd case because we have border control, and people who come into the country are in isolation for 2 weeks, 14 days. And those people generally were New Zealand citizens overseas who were coming back. But we do have, you know, we've had like the Pakistan cricket team come here, and then one of the, you know, we've had people actually walk out of the facilities and go places and then come back. Or we've had the odd person who was there after 12 days, and they've gone to a common area and mixed with someone who was there for 2 days, and then got COVID, and then been found to have a positive PCR test. It's difficult. I've actually been asking some questions about, yes, we might get the odd case, but what happens to those cases? Do we find out whether they had symptoms? Do we find out where they are 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months later? You know, as much as we're locking the country down and are really taking a massive hit on the economy. I mean, our tourism industry it's our number one industry. You can imagine most of our tour operators have gone out of business. A good friend of mine, she now bakes cakes from home, bakes and decorates cakes. We've got little towns that used to be primarily totally tourist focused, and they're now found that, you know, 50% of the jobs have gone. And so those people are having to leave those towns. Suddenly there's no volunteer fire brigade. Suddenly there's not enough kids in the school to keep it open. Suddenly there's not enough, you know, so it's not just, you know, the government have been giving money to people to support their income, but that hasn't necessarily been the whole thing. Last week we had, there was a family who, I think one of the members was a member of the border control. They went home. They were tested positive PCR, so their family was supposed to isolate. One of their family members decided to go and work a shift at KFC, and then also went somewhere else. Suddenly we've got 9 cases. So Auckland goes into level 3. which is not complete lockdown, but effectively we had all these concerts and everything cancelled. And then the rest of New Zealand goes into level 2, which means you can't have more than 100 people. So suddenly all these festivals, all of these free community concerts and everything we had have all been deleted or postponed. Now, I know most of you over there are going, well, gee, we'd just love to have a concert and aren't you lucky? But, you know, we really went hardcore suffering right at the beginning, whereas you guys have been more in an ongoing nightmare day by day for months and months. The vaccines have arrived. The border control people are first on the list. There is a lot more hesitancy here, mostly because people are saying, well, we actually don't have the virus here to be the mainstay. And because still at the moment, there's still a lot of unknowns and there's a lot of discussion about, okay, is it a sterilizing vaccine? And to date, as far as I know, we aren't aware of that to be a case. Sterilizing, for those of you that aren't familiar with that, means that once you get the vaccine, like for instance, measles or smallpox, you don't then get the virus. You don't get sick at all. Whereas these ones, unless there's been an update, it's a non-sterilizing vaccine. So you could still get the virus, but it reduces your mortality and morbidity by a 10-fold. So you can still get sick, but it's less likely to kill you. And then there's also, it's still unknown whether it can prevent you from passing it on. So it may reduce the risk of passing it on, but it doesn't prevent it. So if you're in a country with no real spread and you've got a vaccine treatment that doesn't change, you're getting it, you're getting sick, and you're passing it on, you can see why New Zealand are thinking, well, we're a bit more hesitant. And then we've got the long-term side effects of the 1 year, 2 year, 5 year that we don't know. So there's a lot of unknowns, but there's a lot of two camps. There's a lot of name calling, a lot of, you know, you're an anti-vaxxer, you're a vaccine hesitant, you're a this, you're a that. And this all adds, I was talking about before, about opinion and fact, and also about kindness and maintaining your pantry of wellness and ensuring that you know, you've got more resilience. So, I mean, I have pharmacist friends in the United States, and you know, they've had the vaccinations, and that's, you know, and I understand, because you guys are in, as I say, the polar opposite to where we are. And, you know, I understand that, but in New Zealand, we are in the other way, and we went so hardcore early on. There's a lot of people that are wondering, what do we do? And that makes that very difficult. And I don't want to add fuel to the fire on either camp. But I'm, yeah, so I hope that, so we at the moment, we're currently in level 1. We've just changed that. Auckland's gone to level 2. So no more than 100 people in a congregation of any kind. They go back to level 1 next weekend, provided there's been no further cases. So we're very reactionary. We get 1 or 2 cases, but we get 1 case in the community, the whole country just goes back into a level 3 or level 2 lockdown. So we're quite hardcore at the moment.
That's hardcore. I mean, so it sounds like the health-wise, you guys didn't get really affected severely, but there's a pretty heavy economic burden still, and a lot of
massive
stress and long-term impact, I'm sure. But well, thank you so much for sharing that. I know we're running short on time. Luann, no. I think I personally feel like I really wanted to hear all this. This is really interesting and important, I think. Luann, how much time do you need? Can you give me 5 minutes to answer questions?
I have a full 25 minutes, so I think you have time to do some questions.
I think I'd rather try.
And I'm not sure you I don't think you're going to want to end. So take the time now.
Your connection, you're breaking up. Is it me? Is it everybody?
It's everybody. How about now? Good. It's good now.
That's better. Okay, so I'm gonna.
It's everybody.
I'm gonna, at very minimum, answer Judy's
Go ahead.
questions for a couple of minutes. I don't know if Judy's here, and then maybe I don't see any other questions in the chat, which is nice for a change. I see Jennifer is sleeping with a baby. I kept looking at this. I'm like, is this a real baby? That's not your baby. I'm sure it's your grandson, or is it a great son? Great. Okay. Well, I hope he stays asleep, or she. Okay, so Judy brought up great questions. I don't know, Judy, are you here? If you're not, sorry, I'm going to answer them. If you are,
I'm here.
Judy is here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Good. All right. So the gathering with others. So this is all of these questions assuming post-vaccination. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So gathering with others for holidays. So how many people can? So if everybody's vaccinated, everybody can gather together. I don't think there's any limit to the people. We don't know, I think that's what Mark was saying. We don't know whether the disease can still be transmitted, but if in the group everybody vaccinated, the point is even if somebody is transmitting, chances are that if everybody's vaccinated, nobody gonna get really sick. And since we don't know whether we're transmitting or not, but we're erring on the situation on the side of, okay, people should start having life. The problem is if you have a mixed bag. So let's say you have some people vaccinated and some are not. So basically you're protected, but they're not. So you may be transmitting it to them even though you're vaccinated, and that creates a wrinkle. And that's sort of the gist of the whole discussion with this. So if they're not vaccinated, you probably should all maintain social distance and use standard precautions with the masks and maybe not even gather. If you are, as I said, if you're all vaccinated, so you could also do mixed. So if some people vaccinated, you can put all the vaccinated people in one group and then somehow socially distance everybody else. Again, if you're all vaccinated, I wouldn't even use masks. And I think that's a standard recommendation because I mean, you're going to be eating at Passover. I'm not exactly sure how you're going to use masks anyway. So, you know, that's for that. Now, with gyms is a great question. So gyms, as you all probably heard, we didn't really, I don't think we covered that, but gyms have been multiple places of gyms being a major places of transmission. There was I think it's in Hawaii, right, where there's a major problem where the teacher, the owner and the instructor was sick without knowing and infected something like 60% of the people who were in the gym at the moment. You can imagine why gyms are a problem, because your breathing is a lot more intense when you're exercising. Thus, chances for transmission is a lot higher. So if you're going to the gym and you're vaccinated, that's one thing. I think that probably at this point, if the gym is convenient for you, go with a mask and sort of do what you need to do. Problem is, are you potentially transmitting it to others? Well, that's the question. To my understanding, gyms in the apartments are all still closed. I have not heard or seen gyms being open. Judy, I don't know if in your ability.
Mine is now open to a maximum of 3 people.
Okay, so see, if it's a pretty sizable place and you only have 3 people in it, how is that different from being in an elevator? The only difference is that you're there for a prolonged period of time and you're exercising. So you're sort of, you know, active. But I would, if you were vaccinated in this situation and everybody wears masks in the gym, I'd say it's probably okay for you. Whether it's
how about if they don't wear masks?
Again, you're vaccinated, right?
So we don't have to.
So
Okay.
you sort of protected. The question is, do you know about the other 2 people in there?
They would be vaccinated.
Well, then in reality, do you even need to wear the mask? No.
Exactly. Okay. So
same
no
exact story as with your Passover question. Massages. Well, massages is different. Massages, you know, I wouldn't go to a massage parlor in Chinatown. Nothing against Chinatown. I love it. I'm just, you know, okay, that came out wrong. Anyway, so you get my, I think you're getting where I'm going with this. I wasn't trying to ostracize anybody. I'm just saying, if you go into a healthcare facility for massage, it's a healthcare facility. It's just like any other appointment. Go with a mask and just like acupuncture, dental visit, anything else. You're just doing what you're doing. I think it's pretty much complete come back to normal, except that you wear the mask and you socially distancing yourself when you travel. When you get there, supposedly it's just going to be you and a massage therapist in a room. So shopping in the stores. So shopping is turned out to be a bigger problem than even some of the restaurants, as you may have heard. Definitely no change there. I would use the masks, and the reason is for two. One is, I mean, you probably don't have to since you're protected, but first of all, if you walk into the store without the mask, first of all, people are going to go nuts. And if you're going to keep telling everybody I'm vaccinated, nobody's going to potentially even believe you. So just put the mask on and just eat it up. Okay, so don't even think about it. Go into a store, mask on, and standard precautions, and that's it. Yes, keep social distancing. It's just the stores is one of those transient places where you don't have any control over who's in there. Plus, guess what? You know, you're going to sneeze one time and you have no mask, and you can imagine what the consequences are, like in those cartoons on YouTube that everybody pulls the gun and shoot the poor person, right? So, you know, just be very vigilant, mostly because there's also a lot of stress and a lot of kind of social stigma. So with that, I hope
Dr. Kogan, can I ask a question? Chat is disabled for me, so I can't send it to you in the chat box.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just do that last question because Luann is up. So
yes, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask about the variant that Brazil's experiencing with people being reinfected and people who've been vaccinated being infected with a variant that the vaccine does not work for. We have cases in the US already. Does that change your opinion on being vaccinated and the way you behave?
No, it does not, because at least for now, the AstraZeneca's vaccine seems like kaput against Brazilian, but both Pfizer and Moderna, at least for now, they think that they're probably still effective. And plus, I think it's going to take time before the oldest strains are going to be in a very large amounts. Currently, the largest strain, I think, is Californian one, but both vaccines appear to be relatively protective against that one. You know, some of it, we just have to wait and see what the recs are and how each of those strains actually spreads out. I mean, you don't really actually know. You know, I'm getting more and more confident in Pfizer and Moderna with all the data coming up more and more. We just had a grand rounds on vaccine at GW, and you know, basically it's sort of for now we believe that all these strains, the vaccines have some relative efficacy. Now that may change because, you know, all the strains continue to mutate. It's not like they're all, any of this is static. But, you know, there's also, you probably all have heard, right, that chances are we're all going to get boosters on a regular basis. It's basically what I said from almost day one of the pandemic: get ready for this becoming a seasonal flu. So, you know, just going to get vaccinated on a regular basis. All right. Yeah, sorry about the chat. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself. Sorry, Luann, I took up a little bit of your time, but I really wanted Mark to finish. It was so fascinating. Thank you, Mark, for that. So, and we will not have questions at the end, everybody. So we'll just, if you have questions, hold them till next week.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. That was really wonderful to hear your viewpoint about what New Zealand is going through, and also your approach to de-stressing. Today, I want to lead us in two meditations. It's how to heal through and beyond fear. And why? Because fear prevents us from living our lives fully. Here's the book that I'm taking the first meditation from, Stephen Levine's A Year to Live. I've been reading this book this year, and it's been really helpful to me. I've been calling this year the winter of COVID. The energy of winter is normally a time of quiet, going inward, and conserving. And we have also experienced some of this during the winter of COVID. But the threat and reality of so much death and isolation, our collective and individual suffering, our loss of our sense of control over our lives, our economic and social uncertainty is very wearing on us. And there is also this fear of uncertainty going forward. When will we get the vaccine? And then when will everyone or enough people be vaccinated so that we're able to meet freely with each other, with our friends and family without harming each other? We want to shed this winter of COVID fear and greet the hopeful energy of spring. Spring is that season of fresh zest for life, planting of ideas, where trusting is easier and where we see possibilities blossoming all around. The coming of spring also means we get to turn outward, shake things up, challenge ourselves to make some changes. At this moment, we are in a liminal or in-between space. Winter is almost gone, spring is coming, and with the beginning of vaccination, there is a hopeful emergence into new, freer reality. The second meditation will help us generate a gratitude attitude, directed straight to the ones who share their gifts with the world. It's called the Thanksgiving Address. It's from the Haudenosaunee tribal nation and was used by them to open and close major gatherings or school assemblies, or as an individual's open and close to the day. These words are called the words that come before all else and sets gratitude as a prerequisite for peace. Last night, I got my notice to schedule my first dose of vaccine, and it feels really hopeful. Fear arrives uninvited. Sometimes it can be a protective mechanism to keep us safe by recognizing and avoiding that which will cause harm. But more often it is about our imagination running wild in a deeply conditioned and automatic reaction to any feelings of being physically and emotionally unsafe. Observe your response when fear arises. Do you lean away from it into the last safe moment? Or perhaps you lean forward toward the next possibility of satisfaction. Both are aspects of attachment to wanting to be in control, and both engage our protective fight or flight response. So today, on this mindful exploration, using the ultimate loss of control, the fear of death, as our teacher, it is a simple practice. I breathe out my last breath. I breathe in my next breath. As our awareness embraces fear, control becomes less an issue, and the mind sinks into the heart, the non-judgmental softness in which it can float. If you would like, make it specific to you. Invite your top 3 fears. Write them down if you wish and keep them in your awareness. And just take a few seconds to do this, just automatically what pops up, no judgment. If nothing arises for you immediately, just do the exercises with me today with an open-hearted appreciation for whatever arises. The body follows the mind. The mind follows the breath. Letting go will be about surrendering the breath. Our opening to what is next will be about our hearts. Think of your fear as a wild horse that has been locked up in a small stall. It thrashes about, kicking at the walls, and can do damage to the structure or itself. But leave that wild horse into an open field. It will run about for a while, then settle down in the grass, and soon fall asleep in the sun. So let's do this deep work so we can celebrate the hopeful spring. Take a few moments and position yourself comfortably, and you know how to do this, seated or lying down. Then take your first breaths to settle. First, breathe here into your room, your physical space and time. Then 3 more breaths to settle into your bodies. Soften the jaw. Drop the shoulders. Uncurl your fingers. Place your hands on your low belly, and then find the upper belly bordering the ribs. Then place your hands anywhere on or near the body that feels soft and comfortable. Then breathe into the intention to meet the fear of death or your specific fear. And just follow my words and allow. Pay attention to what you're fearing, what makes you feel powerless. Name it, go there, turn toward it, feel it, be with it. Do not judge it or you. We are here together and we can support each other in this inquiry. Each breath out is my last. Each breath in is my first. Each breath out is my last. Goodbye, winter. Each breath in is my first. Welcome, spring. Feel the heaviness, the substantial quality of the body. Feel gravity pulling this dense body toward the ground. Notice the weight of your living corpse. It often wants to lie down. It cannot support its own weight for very long. It is drawn toward the center of the earth. Notice within this heavy body a flickering field of sensation, a vibratory fluxing, full of your relationship to the external world. Feelings of hot and cold, of roughness or smoothness, even of up and down, which have long supported the misconception that we are of the body rather than just in the body. We imagine we own this body, but it is ours only on consignment. Notice that the sensations in the heavy body are received by something lighter within. Watch how awareness illuminates each incoming sensation and reports on its existence. Within the heavy body is a body of awareness, a light body that produces consciousness of the external vessel and the world about it. It is that which experiences life in or out of the body. Sense the lighter body within. Experience its presence as presence itself. Notice that the sense of being present drifts in a timeless awareness that can never be defined, but can always be explained. The truth in which it floats has no beginning and no end. Observe how each breath drawn in through the nostrils of the heavy body is experienced as a sensation by the light body within. Notice how each breath connects the heavy body with the light body. Notice how each breath maintains that connection, allowing life to stay one more moment. Feel the contact between the light body and the dense body that each breath provides. Feel how each breath sustains the light body balance perfectly within. Take each breath as though it were the last. Experience each inhalation as though it is not going to be followed by another. Don't try to conserve your breath to stay in the body. Let it come, let it go. Each breath the last, let that last exhalation go, and just go on with it. The last breath of life leaving the body, the connection severed between the light body and the heavy body, the end of this life, the final breath. Don't try to hold on to it. Let it go. Let go of your last breath to the light body float free. Let go now. Hold to nothing. Trust the process. Let yourself go into space. Leave your body behind. Follow the light. The last breath vanished into space. Leave your body where it lies and go on. That was never you. There you are shining before you. Enter that light. It is your own great nature. Do not be frightened by your immensity. Release all that holds you back from your ultimate fulfillment. Dissolve your heart into the great heart. Let you, who you have always been, become who you are. Gently, gently let yourself float free of the body, constantly expanding outward through decreasing levels of density into increasing depth of grace. Enter the vastness of being. Rest there in your birthright. Accept your inheritance. Let yourself dissolve into the vastness, edges melting, boundaries disappearing, dissolving into space, uniting with the absolute joy of your absolute nature. Space dissolving in space, light merging with light. Let go of your knowing. Let go of your unknowing, and simply be the presence expanding into the luminosity of its own great heart. Let that which is light follow its well-lit path. Don't ask the mind for advice. Just follow your light. It knows the way by heart. Let go of your name. Let go of your face. Let go of your reputation and float free in the vastness. With gratitude and a single sigh, leave your body behind with that life you dreamed once. Notice as you expand into that sense of safety that there arises a comfort so deep and natural, you wonder where it has been all your life. Let go of your understanding and float free in your intuition. Enter the space in which your thoughts are floating. Let go into the light. Light dissolving into light. Space dissolving in space. Consciousness floating free in pure awareness. Have mercy on yourself. Let yourself go, radiating out into space, merging with the great heart that has no substance, but is as real as you are. No inside, no outside, just edgeless being in endless space. Space expanding into space. Light dissolving into light. Rest in being. Float free in your original spaciousness. And from the vanishing point on the most distant horizon, watch as something slowly approaches. It is the first breath of life. And with that breath arrives a new body. Noticing the desires that arise as that new incarnation approaches the dimming of the light that precedes the point of forgetfulness. Attempt to stay alert through the process of re-entry. Each breath the first, each breath completely new, taking birth once again, born back into a body to examine what was born and what never dies, taking birth for the benefit of all sentient beings. The light body re-inhabiting a heavy body, reanimating life and the possibility of awareness that lasts a lifetime. Each breath the first, born to serve and explore, to deepen the mercy of whatever world we find ourselves in. Each breath so precious, allowing the light body to remain a moment more within its earthen vessel. Taking birth in this world to discover the healing we have so long sought, and to sing the song we have been learning since forever. No one said it would be easy, only fruitful. Each breath the first, the last, the only breath available to carry us beyond our forgetfulness into the shimmering center of our living truth. Rest in this new rebirth of awareness and give thanks. Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving Address. This Thanksgiving address was used by the Six Nations of the Haudenosaunee, or Iroquois, to open and close major gatherings. The six tribes are the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Cayuga, Onondaga, Seneca, and Tuscarora. The people. Today we have gathered and we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now we bring our minds together as one, as we give greeting and thanks to each other as people. Now our minds are one. This is the chorus at the end of each of these Thanksgiving statements. So please say it with me or in your heart. Earth Mother, we are thankful to our Mother, the Earth, for she gives us all that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk about upon her. It gives us joy that she continues to care for us as she has from the beginning of time. To our Mother, we send greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one. The waters. We give thanks to all the waters of the world for quenching our thirst, providing us with strength. Water is life. We know its power in many forms: waterfalls and rain, mists and streams, rivers and oceans. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the Spirit of water. Now our minds are one. To the fish of life in the water, they were instructed to cleanse and purify the water. They also give themselves to us as food. We are grateful that we can still find pure water. So we turn now to the fish and send our greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one. We turn toward the vast fields of plant life. As far as the eyes can see, the plants grow, working many wonders. They sustain many life forms. With our minds gathered together, we give thanks and look forward to seeing plant life for many generations to come. Now our minds are one. With one mind, we turn to honor and thank all the food plants we harvest from our garden. Since the beginning of time, the grains and vegetables, beans and berries have helped the people survive. Many other living things draw strength from them too. We gather all the plant foods together as one and send them a greeting of thanks. Now our minds are one. We turn to the medicine herbs of the world. From the beginning, they were instructed to take away sickness. They are always waiting and ready to heal us. We are happy there are still among us those special few who remember how to use these plants for healing. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the medicines and to the keepers of the medicines. Now our minds are one. We gather our minds together to send greetings and thanks to all the animal life in the world. They have many things to teach us as people. We are honored by them when they give up their lives so we may use their bodies as food for our people. We see them near our homes and in the deep forests, and we are glad that they are still here and we hope that it will always be so. Now, our minds are one. We turn our thoughts to the trees. The earth has many families of trees who have their own instructions and use. Some provide us with shelter and shade, others with fruit, beauty, and other useful things. Many people of the world use a tree as a symbol of peace and strength. With one mind, we greet and thank the tree life. We put our minds together as one and thank all the birds who move and fly about over our heads. The Creator gave them beautiful songs. Each day they remind us to enjoy and appreciate life. The eagle was chosen to be their leader. To all the birds, from the smallest to the largest, we send our joyful greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one. We are thankful to the powers we know as the four winds. We hear their voices in the moving air as they refresh us and purify the air we breathe. They help us to bring the change of the seasons from the four directions they come, bringing us messages and giving us strength. With one mind, we send our greetings and thanks to the four winds. Now our minds are one. Closing words. We have now arrived at the place where we end our words. Of all the things we have named, it was not our intention to leave anything out. If something was forgotten, we leave it to each individual to send such greetings and thanks in their own way. Now our minds are one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luann, as always. I think I'm speechless. I think we should just end where we are. Everybody on our coast, do enjoy the glorious sun. I think it's very consistent with Luann's message. And we'll see you all next Friday.